look, if these schools, if what they're really doing, which it appears, when you said, what's their goal? Well, I think their goal is kind of to maximize their status and their wealth over time. And if that's what they want to do, fine, but then they're not nonprofits.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely.
And taxpayers subsidize these schools enormously.
Even schools like Harvard with endowments that are like
Harvard has an endowment of $50 billion, okay?
Unbelievable.
And if you give money to Harvard, it's tax deductible. Harvard's earnings on the endowment are tax deductible. Harvard's exempt from state taxes and from property taxes. The bills they evade are massive, okay? Collectively, there's a sociologist named Charlie Eaton at UC Merced, and he's put an estimate on this. $20 billion a year taxpayers are subsidizing these schools.
They're so crazy.
So there's only, what could they do in return? Well, either they could produce a lot of people who go on to do-gooder careers, but they don't do that. They produce investment bankers and management consultants, or they could let in a diverse class. I would have said a socioeconomically and racially diverse class. Maybe they can't consciously manipulate a racially diverse class now, but they could certainly let in a socioeconomically diverse class. They don't come anywhere near it. Nobody here is talking about perfection. I'm not saying 20% of the students need to be from the bottom income quintile. Okay, how about we get to 7% of the students, right? At my college, people don't even believe this statistic. 2/3 of CUNY students come from families making less than $30,000 a year.
Wow.
So we have an apartheid system in the United States. We have colleges of the poor that produce our police officers and firefighters and teachers, and we have colleges of the rich that are tax subsidized and produce our management consultants and investment bankers.
And it seems like there is that population of like small private schools, though, that are increasingly shutting their doors, that are the colleges of people with student loans that ultimately are failing. Like there's a statistic that at 1/3 of American colleges, the median graduate will ultimately make less than the average high school graduate. So 1/3 of schools, there's not even any return on your investment in your education. And you see more and more small colleges merging and closing. And I think that's a market correction that is necessary. But I mean, what is your thought on that phenomenon?
Well, one thing I'll just say on that, I mean, look, obviously we could spend days talking about American higher education, and I've seen that data, and the way I summarize it to people, look, if you can get your kid into Columbia, you're going to get a return on that dollar. It's probably worth remortgaging your house to do that. But there's an in-between college where I don't really understand why somebody would do that instead of sending their kid to a public college. One thing that you would imagine if you have that type of polarization and consolidation that you're describing, which I think is accurate, is that Harvard and Yale and Columbia and Princeton would expand their class size, but they haven't.
Yeah.
Harvard admits the same number of students that it did when I went to college.
And scarcity is the luxury.
Exactly.
Certainly. And what are your thoughts on the student loan forgiveness debate? Because this is one, I don't have student loans, I don't have skin in the game here. But this is one where I definitely, as a more conservative person, often break with people because I think, in my view, letting 17-year-olds who can't even drink a beer for 4 more years sign a paper promising the government effectively the beginning of their paychecks in their adulthood when they in high school are not taught to look for career paths or think of career readiness, or critically, even when you're in college, you're finding yourself and not critically examining what your gender studies degree is actually going to do for you in the end and where that's applicable and how that works in the job market. And your promise that getting a degree is the key to ascending in society, and you're 17 and you don't understand, and there's social stigma and pressure, and nobody's taught you financial literacy in high school. That's something that I certainly experienced. And so what even is an interest rate, and what is that going to look like in the end, and what is compound interest? I actually was totally fine with student loan forgiveness programs that, if not in the iteration that they passed, because the only way that makes sense is if we say, okay, we did this mass experiment with this blind faith in education being the kind of panacea to all of our social ills and class differences, and it failed. And so how are we going to help bail out the kids who are now crippled by federally backed student loans that the government put them in that position in the first place and failed to teach them? But then also, how do we stop that for the next generation? Because all that did was create a precedent that just keep doing it and we'll forgive you, and we haven't done anything to actually fix the root of the problem.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. If you were kind of asking me how we should spend some government money. Loan forgiveness would not have been the top of my list. I would think about creating some prospective incentives for people to go to college. I might try to make community college free or something like that. I presume that choice was made because it was politically doable and politically popular as opposed to, but I'm not even sure that those are the people who, if I were just going to do kind of direct transfer payments to people, that those are the people I would make them to. I just put money in the poorest people's pockets, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that there could be a world where we make schools responsible for the loans that they dole out. And if someone defaults, that's the school's fault, and the school should be getting penalized for that. And I mean, there are schools that have been so thoroughly insulated from just free market pressure by 17-year-olds who don't understand what they're signing, by government intervention that is ultimately harming them in the end and not helping them, and schools that just keep their doors open, piling people up with debt when they don't even have a positive outcome in the end. And the thing that is even the craziest, it was hard for me to even wrap my head around this. Do you know what school or what master's program has the highest default of any in the entire country? It's one program at one specific school.
I mean, I'll never get this right. Let me think what the